Thank you for joining us for this special council meeting on Tuesday, May the 26th. So please join me in a short moment of private contemplation as we do start each of our council meetings. So please join me. Okay, thank you, everyone. So I will call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. And the first item of business is adoption of agenda. So I have a recommendation that the special council agenda dated May the 26th, 2020 be adopted as printed. May I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Dykey, Councillor Lamb. Any additions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? It is carried. At this time, council, you may declare any pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, moving on to item 4, public meeting. 4.1, recommendation that the statutory public meeting be called to order at 7:01 p.m. A mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Contois, Councillor Orr, all in favor? It is carried. So I'll just read the introduction. Purpose of the meeting. So this meeting is a statutory public meeting held pursuant to section 1734 and 51 of the Planning Act to discuss amendments to zoning bylaw 2010-050. The town has received an application that has been deemed complete under the Planning Act and is therefore required to hold this public meeting as part of the application review process. Comments presented at this public meeting are being recorded by staff. Personal information is being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions regarding the collection and use of personal information should be directed to the clerk. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to council before a decision is made on the proposal, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So item 4.3, public information meeting. So the application for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. The owner applicant is the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat of Canada. The agent is MHBC Planning Limited, care of Marias Jasdresgi. And with us tonight is David McKay. The location is 3999 Sideroad 10, file number D09-2001 and D14-2002. So the planning report, planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the application being presented by staff represents the applicant's development proposal. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. So maybe before I hand it over to Thomas Dysart, our planner, I'll just comment that with COVID-19 and the restrictions that we do have on council meetings, that this is a public meeting under the Planning Act using Zoom technology, electronic technology, and members of the public were invited to register so that they will be able to speak tonight. We do have members of the public that will be joining us by Zoom. They are watching at this time, as well as there are some members of the public that have phoned in and are listening to the proceedings of the public meeting. So with that, I'll turn over the meeting to Thomas Dysart, our Town of BWG planner, and he'll make the presentation of the application for 3999 Sideroad 10. Thomas?
Can you hear me? Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and everyone watching and listening at home this evening. My name is Thomas Dysart, and tonight I will be presenting on the applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the property municipally known as 399 Sideroad 10. Tonight I will be discussing the purpose of the public meeting, introduce the application, provide an overview of the subject property, summarize comments received to date, and provide next steps. If anyone wishes to receive further notification on these applications, to send an email to either planninginfo@townofbwg.com or to myself at tdysart@townofbwg.com if you have not already done so. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the applicants of proposal to council and members of the public and invite questions and seek input. As an application has been received under the Planning Act and deemed complete, the municipality is obligated to hold a public meeting. As a reminder, staff are introducing the applicant's proposal and have not yet completed a detailed review of the application. Council will not make any decisions this evening, and should anyone wish to receive further updates on the application, to do so either by emailing planninginfo@townofbwg.com or to myself. An application for official plan amendment and rezoning was submitted by David McKay and Moritz Jisterbitsky of MHBC Planning Limited on behalf of Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat Canada, or AMJ. The purpose of the application is to permit a cemetery on the subject property, as well as accessory uses that include 2 equipment storage sheds, a multi-purpose building that is being used for reception and office space, 2 residences for caretaking staff, as well as parking and trails throughout the site. Notice of tonight's meeting was given in accordance with regulations under the Planning Act. Signage was confirmed erected on the property on March 4th, 2020 with a notice of complete application and notice of public information meeting going to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property on March 12th, 2020. An ad was also placed in the March 12th edition of the Bradford Topic. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the public information meeting originally scheduled for May 5th of this year was postponed, and notice of postponement was published on April 16th, 2020. Notice of tonight's rescheduled public information meeting was sent on May 7th with an ad also placed in the Bradford Topic. The subject lands are located on the east side of Sideroad 10, south of line 12. The property is approximately 19.66 hectares and is largely surrounded by agricultural properties and detached dwellings. The property is located outside the Bradford urban area and Bondhead settlement area. The property is designated as agricultural in the 2002 official plan and is within a waste disposal assessment area. The applicants are proposing to redesignate the subject site to a special policy area that would permit the proposed uses. In zoning bylaw 2010-050 as amended, zoning for the property has been deferred. At the time of the passing of the bylaw in 2010, the property owner was seeking to secure permissions from the County of Simcoe for a cemetery on the subject site and submitted an appeal to the County of Simcoe, who was reviewing their official plan at the time. That appeal remains in effect. As such, the deferral results to the underlying agricultural zoning remaining in place. The applicants are proposing to zone the property to the rural exception zone to permit the proposed uses. The applicants are proposing an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment that would enable the development of a 6.0303 hectare cemetery and associated uses, which include a 1-story multi-purpose building for reception and office space, 2 funeral supply and equipment storage shed, accommodation for 2 cemetery caretakers, parking and multi-use trails throughout the site, with the existing house also remaining on site. So this is the site plan that was submitted as part of the application. However, if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of give you an orientation of where everything is, with Sideroad 10 being on the left of the map. The accommodation for caretakers and the storage shed are in the green circle. The multi-purpose building is in the blue triangle, and the cemetery is in the red rectangle. The application and the materials submitted as part of the application were circulated to internal departments and external agencies for review and comment in March of this year. And those are just some of the studies that were submitted as part of this application. The application and its materials are continuing to be reviewed by staff. However, staff have received comments from the following external agencies and town departments. Our accessibility coordinator has confirmed that the number of accessible parking spaces exceeds that's required, however, notes that the site plan does not show the dimensions. The town of BWG Development Engineering Department has had concerns over discrepancies in reports and improper periods of analysis in several reports that were submitted as part of the application. The town of BWG Fire Department has provided comments on requiring adequate water supply and fire access routes. And the County of Simcoe has provided comments that state the applicant has to demonstrate that the application is consistent with provincial planning policy. These agencies have confirmed that they have no comments or concerns with the proposal. Staff have received several comments from members of the public indicating concern with the application. To summarize, concerns have been surrounding increased traffic and its impacts on Side Road 10, noise from events that may occur or previously have occurred on the site, impacts on well water, loss of agricultural lands, the need for the cemetery in Bradford and Simcoe County, and future development of the adjacent lands. In addition, there have been several concerns over negative impact on real estate values. In addition, since publication of council's agenda and this presentation to the town's website, the town has received around 50 or so emails indicating their support for the applications, as they are members of the AMJ community and residents of Bradford. And residents of Bradford who currently have to travel to Vaughan, Brampton, or Mississauga to visit departed family members and to visit departed family members and would appreciate a cemetery closer to home. This concludes the presentation. As a reminder, this meeting is being held under the Planning Act, and staff are introducing the applicant's proposal. Staff are continuing with a detailed review of the application and will bring back a recommendation report once a comprehensive review takes place. The agent is here this evening to present on the application as well as answer any questions from council or the public may have. And as a reminder, if anyone wishes to receive future notification on this application, to send an email to planninginfo@townofbwg.com or to myself at tdysart@townofbwg.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So next up, I'll ask Mr. David McKay if he wants to speak to the application as well. And I believe you have a presentation as well. So
yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is David McKay. I'm a registered professional planner with MHBC Planning, and I do have a presentation that hopefully is not too much of an overlap with Thomas's presentation. So I think if that could be put up, that would be great.
I apologize. I'm just looking for your presentation. I have it here.
No problem.
We're good.
This is new to all of us.
Yeah, there it is.
Great. Thank you very much. As Thomas had mentioned, this is a proposal for a funeral and cemetery grounds by the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat of Canada, or AMJC for short. We can go to the next slide. Just as an introduction, AMJC is one of the oldest Canadian Muslim organizations in Canada since 1966, with branches throughout the major cities in Canada. They have 86 chapters throughout Canada and a mosque in every major city. Bradford is one of their chapters, and they have 3 other chapters in total in Simcoe County. As well as a religious organization, they do have a charitable organization called Humanity First, which operates a number of local, provincial, national, and international works throughout the world, dealing with major international events and helping those in need. Unlike most organizations, they are very well much involved with their communities, having been involved with major political and events promoting peace and prosperity for all. And as you can see, a number of visitations with state and provincial and national leaders throughout Canada and the world. Next slide. So in terms of their funeral arrangements, unlike other Muslims, the AMJC, the Ahmadiyya, have to be buried within their own burial grounds. They cannot be placed with other Muslims within their faith. And as particularly, there's a group called Muzis who have specific graveyards within the community graveyards. And Muzis are those who provide 10% of their earnings as well as their estate to the community at large. So it's a special burial significance for them. Next slide. Obviously, I believe a number of you know that the AMJC is actively involved with Bradford through their chapter and is part of the community. And this cemetery will serve the chapters within the GTA Simcoe chapter, Simcoe County, as well as Bradford specifically. Next slide. The subject lands are located in blue on this map, and this is what Thomas had showed you in terms of the blow up. There is additional lands, approximately 250 acres, that were purchased over time, outlined in red, but it's only the blue area that is subject to the applications today. Next slide. Today, there is a house on the property with existing ponds from a previous extraction operation. On the eastern portion of the lands are significant woodlands, which are intended to be protected and enhanced through this application, and restored. The land's restored there too. Next slide. So in terms of the population, as with the rest of the overall population, it has grown. There are approximately 10,000 members of the Ahmadiyya community within 50 kilometers of this property. Approximately 6,500 are Muzis, and approximately 25% of that community are, of the overall group, are Muzis. So there is a substantial component for specialized burial services. And within Simcoe County, obviously, there's 874 members, 2/3 of which live in Bradford today. Next slide. So unfortunately, as planners, we plan very well for growth and the living, not as well for death and burials. So as I will note later, there is a need for general burial services within both Simcoe and Bradford, as well as specifically for AMJC. In terms of the Islamic burial traditions, it is to occur as quickly as possible after death. There is a preparation of the body. There is a viewing that occurs between two separate viewing rooms, one for males, one for females. There's a prayer service, a reception following those prayers, and then the burial and the reception afterwards. Next slide. And as I'd mentioned just a moment ago, there is a need for a cemetery in Bradford overall, but also specifically for the AMJC. We have provided statistical analysis by urban metrics, identifying that there is a deficit today within the town of Bradford for non-denominational cemeteries, and in Simcoe County that will be exhausted by 2031. And this is taking into account about a 10 to 15 year period for cemetery approvals in terms of acquisitions, the various studies, going through the approval process, both planning and otherwise, and then licensing. So that takes into consideration those items. In terms of the AMJ community, they are looking to the future to accommodate their burial requirements. And so this facility if approved, would satisfy their needs for the next 17 to 19 years. Next slide. You've seen this plan. So when we looked at the property for AMJC, there was a number of tests done on the property looking at where to locate the cemetery. It was determined based on the water table and other factors that the north portion of the 250 acres was the appropriate location for the cemetery. And so we've worked through the proposal, both their requirements in terms of the positioning of the buildings on site, caretaker requirements, groundkeeping equipment to come up with this design. And we've included substantial buffers around the property that will be planted over time, both immediately and over time from the adjacent properties. We've made sure that's about 100 feet from the cemetery grounds to those property lines at the closest point. Next slide. And this is just the overall lands that they own and the green space that exists both today in terms of natural heritage features and what would exist in the future. Slide. We have submitted elevations for both the caretaker residence, the semi-detached, fairly straightforward, as well as the multi-purpose building, and those would be refined through the site plan approval process if this is approved by council, the proposed use. Next slide. Just in terms of the layout, again, there is one entrance off of the street leading to a parking lot. We have met the parking requirements of the town for the facility, and that's based off the square footage of the proposed multi-story, multi-purpose building, as well as the various storage equipment, funeral supply building, and whatnot. Next slide. These are just a number of different views, images, 3D images of what the facility may look like as it develops. Next slide. And again, looking as a bit of an aerial view, but looking at the layout from the street. Next slide. Obviously, the parking area, we haven't shown any green space in there. There are plantings, but that will occur through the site plan approval process. Next slide. Next slide. So I'll stop here for a second. Just in terms of the multi-purpose building, it is designed for their efficiency. In terms of the building size, we've made it as efficient as possible. As you can see, there's a woman's viewing room on one side, a men's viewing room in the other, a common dining hall area for the reception afterwards, offices, storage space, and a small kitchen for those receptions of cookies and the like that occurs through the reception period. Next slide. And then we obviously need to keep the grounds maintained. So there are a number of buildings, both the caretaker building in the background that's semi-detached, as well as two maintenance buildings that would house the various equipment for the ground maintenance and in terms of tractors and things like that for the grounds. Next slide. Obviously, the existing ponds are a feature that will be utilized as part of the grounds and will be landscaped and incorporated into the setting for the burials as well as those who visit on an ongoing basis. Next slide. And obviously, just you know, the cemetery plots are similar to the picture I showed previously. They are typical burial plots with headstones that are placed along the locations, along the paths for the members of the community. And then the next slide is just a blow up of that. So fairly standard cemetery layout and condition. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may or the public may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mackay. So at this time, we will have public participation, and as this is an electronic meeting, any members of the public who have registered with the clerk prior to the meeting will now be given an opportunity to speak. And we'll have all members of the public speak first, and then after they speak, then we'll turn it over to the applicant or our town staff to answer as best they can, or they will get back to you with an answer and comments. And in the final staff report, that will take into account all the comments and questions that we have.
First up, we have James Walker.
Can you hear me?
We can, Mr. Walker.
First of all, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I will be relatively brief. And for all you members, of course, who know my wife Lillian, the points I share are coming from both of us. This is new to me, doing things this way, so I just hope you will bear with me. I just wanted to say that prior to this meeting tonight, this telecast, we have reviewed the entire proposal from the AMJC community. And Lillian and I just want to say we both fully support this proposal. We propose a proposal for the cemetery and the buildings that are needed to meet the needs of our community. You know, Jonathan Scott said in a report yesterday that the 10th line is becoming like a new Church Street. And he said Jehovah's Witnesses, Baptists, Presbyterians, now Muslims. And I think this is a great thing. Jonathan's article brought a memory back to me. I'm a country music fan. One of my favorites was the late Merle Haggard, and he created an album, 4 sides to the vinyl, The Land of Many Churches. And when you look at the town of Bradford, in effect, we have many churches, and now we are faced with different religious communities on the 10th line. And I just think we need that just as we need more cemeteries. This town really has a number of dedicated cemeteries already. Mr. Mayor, on your home church at the Bonhead United, you have a cemetery. The Presbyterians have a cemetery. The Anglicans, Roman Catholics, they all have cemeteries. Why not the Muslims? They are as meaningful to us as anyone else in this community. So I think they should be given our support. The Ahmadiyans support our community. We need to support them. We may not understand everything about the Muslim faith, but we have to show love and respect for them as they show love and respect for us. So their beliefs, including their benefits, their burial rights, deserve respect from the community, from this council. So I hope through the various processes that you go through, that you will give this very serious consideration. And I really hope, we really hope, Lillian and I, we have a lot of respect for you on council. We have a lot of respect for our entire community, and we have a lot of respect for our many Muslim friends. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, council. Good night, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Jim, so yes, thank you for being the first one to be part of an electronic planning meeting. So thank you for that, Jim. So next up is Jamil Ahmad. And Jamil, you are the president of the Muslim Jamaat of Bradford, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, it sounds good. Carry on.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Your Worship, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and Honorable Council of the Town of Bradford. Sir, my name is Jamil Ahmed. As you have heard, I'm the President of local chapter of Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat. My family and I moved to Bradford from Woodbridge in 2016 and made this great town as our permanent residence for the rest of our lives. We want this town to be our last abode as well. We support the application and thank the council for its consideration and ultimate approval of the community cemetery. Sir, you are fully aware that Ahmadiyya Muslim community is one of the fastest growing communities in the fastest growing town of Bradford. About 5 years ago, this community had less than 60 members. Now its strength is close to 1,000. A careful projection based on the ground realities indicates that this number would grow to be about 2,000 by the year 2022, which would be about 6% of the population. Now, this community plays its positive and active role in socioeconomic and cultural life of our neighborhood. It appreciates the growing need of the community in its larger perspective and is always prepared to participate and even initiate such programs as would help the greater good of the community. I may be allowed to mention only two of the several initiatives that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community have been playing the role in, such as keeping the city clean and the Run for Bradford. The Run for Bradford, gentlemen, has generated tens of thousands of dollars to addressing some of the needs of the city library and prospective community health center and others. I would like to appreciate and thank His Worship and the Council for their support in such initiatives. As well as we all know, growing communities bring with them growing opportunities and also growing needs. In terms of opportunities, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community encourages its membership to do the local shopping and investment in order to support the local businesses, which is their contribution toward the economic growth and the strength of the local market. With the growth of the community, we feel desperate need of the cemetery. The community requires the council to do relevant zoning in order for us to build a cemetery and other requisite arrangements needed for the purpose. It would be great if we could pay our last homage to our brothers and sisters in faith at one place. Sir, we assure you that we would keep the place in the best shape, neat and clean, in accordance with our faith, that is, cleanliness is half of our faith. Sir, we thank you once again for considering this application in timely fashion, and we would be thankful to the council forever for their act of kindness. With these submissions, my family and I support the approval of this application. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hamad. I'll ask our clerk, do you want to introduce the next speaker, Rebecca, to us? Do you have somebody on?
Certainly on board is Salim Akhtar. Go ahead, please.
Okay, Salim.
Can you hear me?
You can, sir. Go ahead.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, it does sound a little bit muffled, but start out and I'll make sure that everybody can hear you.
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Can you go ahead?
Yes, that sounds good.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Worship, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, as well as the council members. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Quite a number of points that I wanted to make have already been covered by the president of the community. So therefore, in order to save time, I think it would be most befitting that I don't reiterate those, don't say the same points again. As the president was saying, that the community has been waiting for this moment for quite some time, and we are extremely thankful to you, your worship, as well as the council for bringing up this application. We know it takes some time. I having worked for the federal government for several years, over 30 years, I do know it takes the same amount of time with the council and also the provincial government. So, but we hope that very graciously you will give it priority so that this community feels better. With that note, sir, I thank you once again and the entire council for taking up this application this evening and spending time on that. Thank you very much once again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Akhtar, for making those comments. So I'll ask our clerk again to introduce the next speaker.
Next, we have Jalise Kohak.
So I'll just wait until you get the unmute button off and
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Honorary Mayor and Deputy Mayor and City Council members. Just confirm if you can hear me once again.
yes, you're coming through very well. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Much of what I wanted to say was already covered by David Mackay's presentation. And we can see that there are only 3 remaining active cemeteries left within the municipality of Bradford West Glenberry. And regardless of how many are left, all these cemeteries hold a deep historical connection to the local community, regardless of race or creed. And they definitely bring residents closer to an understanding of the past. And moving forward, they're constantly providing significant, reassurance for families with loved ones buried in that area. And even beyond their functional value, cemeteries can act as a place of memorial. And I think that's one of the number one things that we're pushing for, is having that place of memorial. And the stories of those who are rested in the cemetery, they weave together and become a fabric of history of our community. And I know if not all members, if all the members hold a memory dear to their heart, especially within the city or for the country. And I know this is something respected council member Mr. Ron Orr also really pushed for during his initiative and during his campaign of holding historical value within Bradford. And it was repeated over and over again, creating a balance between Bradford's old small town charm and new industrial suburban facade. And I think having this as like a new cemetery will be held dear for generations. And I think it couldn't have been said better, except other than the words of our founder of our community, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him, in which he wrote a book called The Will, in which he says that future generations, having seen all of them buried in one location, it would strengthen their own faith. And so that their great services, the services to humanity, will live forever in the people's memory. And with that said, I think as years go by, not only will the cemetery be held in the hearts of many members of our community, but it will start to hold historical significance and preserve their status in the community of Bradford West Glenberry. And I am really hoping and praying that whatever decision is made is hopefully it'll be seen by the further generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokar. So I'll ask our clerk, is there anybody else that has contacted us wishing to speak to this application?
No, Your Worship, we have received, as our planner mentioned, many emails in support and many emails both opposed and in support, but there's no one left registered to speak tonight.
Okay, with that, we'll turn the meeting over to members of council, and that will allow members of council to ask questions or make comments at this time. So at this time, I'll open it up and let's see. I see Councillor Sandhu. I'll start with you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to begin by saying thank you to the staff, to the applicants, to the members of public that sent in comments or spoke today. Like our clerk said, we have received many emails in last 2-3 days. Many in support and some has concerns. You know, concerns regarding traffic, concerns regarding increase in noise, concerns regarding devalue of their properties with real estate. And we have heard these concerns when we were looking at the seniors application for the building. And I recognize and understand that these concerns by these individuals, that's how they feel. That's their genuine concerns. And that's why we have the public meeting, to hear those concerns so the applicants and our staff can address it. And then the report comes to us and we look at it, looking at all the answers for the concerns that were brought up. There was one letter that was sent, I think it was today, that that was opposing this application, that it said in the letter that we don't want people from GTA or Toronto coming here to have their funerals. When I read that, it made me think a bit. You know, we have the AMJ community here, living in our town, paying property taxes here in our town, shopping in our town, spending dollars in our town. But when they lose a loved one, we say you have to go somewhere else to bury them. I don't think we show respect to the person that passed away or the family. And I think the people in GTA probably are saying the same thing. You live in Bradford, West Glenbury. Why are you coming here? So I think we need to look at this in an open mind, with an open mind, to see the need. We have 2 active cemeteries, like it was mentioned, and we're projected to grow to 50,000 by 2031. I think the Mount Pleasant has 100 to 150 sites available. We do have land to expand. And the other one, the Ebenezer one, has 40 to 50. So in total, right now, we only have 200 sites available, spots available in our 2 cemeteries. I'm not denying that there might be genuine concerns. I support this application. I do have concerns with some of the items in the application. As I mentioned to the one of the members of the AMD community, that, you know, why do we need 2 houses for the caretakers? Why do we need a caretaker at the cemetery? Those are the questions that would be answered through the process, and I'm hoping we will get those answers. But I'm going to support this. I know our staff will do a good job. They will come back with a thorough report answering everyone's questions. And I look forward to hearing from other members of the council, but in principle, I do support it because this is required. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sandhu. Councillor Lamb.
Yes, I'm going to view this as the same as I would any development, you know, based on what effect it has on the community. I only got really one question, and that's the numbers. We're looking at, first of all, I got to preface this. I explore cemeteries all the time because I'm kind of a genealogist, and I've been to lots of them, and I find that the historical significance is extremely valuable. And I found as far back as my 5th and 6th great grandparents, and it's pretty cool stuff. On the other hand, when I read the one portion here about funeral sites, in Amadea, The musees are required to be buried in specific graveyards of the community, which means I guess then they can't go into a public graveyard unless I'm not sure whether a specific area could be set aside for the musees. But in this particular situation, I'll steal from Baines, the self-imposed math guy over there, by suggesting that when we have, say, 600 musees in Bradford, because I took 874 times 60% or whatever, and then the other gentleman said there's close to 1,000. Fair enough, and then there's going to be 2,000. But when you're looking at almost 15 acres, and I don't know how many plots are in an acre, but I'm going to guess 1,000, because an acre is 44,000 square feet. And if you need 20 square feet per plot, you're almost at 2,000, but you got roads and such like that. And the fact that, our life expectancy, hopefully for guys like me, is 82 as well, that they can cover off what they need. And I'm going to go back to specific graveyards of the community. I don't want to be a graveyard for the GTA because I am concerned about traffic. I'm concerned that Middletown Side Road or Side Road 10 is pretty busy now, and it could get busier. And also, I got to remind council that there are other potential applications for cemeteries and all in the county. And if you read between the lines of the report, you'll see that there's there's another plot of land just down the block there that is also at the county to look at whether, I'm not certain specifically, but it's in the same category as agricultural land that could be as a cemetery. So it's something that needs to be addressed. But I thank the community for coming forward and enlightening us on their need. I just hope that it's mutual respect everywhere, because I'll tell you, in society, change is frightening, and I'm hoping that that this community that I grew up in has as big a heart as I hope they do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lamb. Deputy Mayor Leduc.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Worship. I do want to speak in favor of this application. I think everybody should have a right to a proper burial. I know many religions out there have their own cemeteries, and I can see the Muslims having a cemetery themselves. I have no problem with that. I have some concerns with the application. I have some size issues with it. I too want to think about going through the process, and I look forward to some questions being answered in regards to the caretakers' dwellings. I'm not sure why we would require them. I don't know too many cemeteries anymore that have caretakers living on the ground, so I'm not sure about that. But I believe everybody has a right to a proper burial, and I think it's something that we should be looking at. We're a very diverse community. I think we have some room to allow the AMJ. I mean, they've been a member of our community for many years now, and they have done some great things in our community with helping with cleanups and the Run for Bradford. They do invest in their community, and it's love for all, hatred for none. So I think they have a great slogan. I think it's a religion, and I'm a Catholic. I mean, I'm a Catholic, and I go to church, and I pray to my religion, and we have our burial in our areas. So I too can see that this is a needed asset for them. We're all struggling for more burial grounds. I mean, we have done it where we've done the walls for burial instead of into the ground, because it's just it's needed. There's not that much space anymore. So I have some concerns about the application. I think the size of it is a little bit, as Councillor Lamb had said, there was concerns with the size, but I'm more prepared to support the application and look forward to some of the answers. I have a concern with the comments from the engineering department where they can't support it because of servicing. I'd like to see some of the ideas of how to service it. So I'm going to support the application as it stands right now, and wait for the comments to come back from our planning staff to see how they can address some of the concerns that I have and possibly others have within our community. But I think it's something that we should look at certainly supporting in the future for the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Orr next, and then Councillor Ferragini after that. Councillor Orr.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it, you know, as a town or as a area progresses, definitely change comes. No matter what, over years, change does come, and you know, we have to look at these the need of the people of the town. The only thing the same as the deputy mayor, is there any comment as to what the concerns were with the analysis from development engineering? I don't know whether Thomas can answer that, or where, you know, how serious or what were those issues? I'd like a response on that.
Thomas, do you want to
Yeah.
reply to that?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, to Council Orr, engineering had concerns with, in some of the reports, some of the dates just weren't traditional dates used to analyze certain studies, and they just had concerns with respect to those. It wasn't anything major, just some of the discrepancies in the report that the applicant will have to address in either a resubmission or into comments to the town.
Okay, Councillor Ferragini.
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, thank you to the audience. Thank you to everybody who put forward their comments today. Also, the amount of emails that we received, both support and non-support. I know that just by reading a lot of the emails, a lot of the people that were in support are from the organization, and a lot of the people that were in non-support are basically the residents that live right within the vicinity of the area. One of the things I wanted to bring up was the 120-meter notice that goes out to the residents in the area. I feel that's not sufficient, because when you're dealing with rural lots, you know, properties are so far apart that a lot of the people that may get affected or feel that they're affected don't actually have the proper notice about the public consultation. This is not like an urban area. There's a wide range between neighbors. So I wrote down some notes as I was listening to the presentation that was being put forward. And I know that I wanted to ask first to Thomas what the proper zoning is for cemeteries. And I thought I heard that you mentioned that it's rural exception zoning. And I know that there are rural lands in our area, not agricultural lands. You know, one of the main things that I campaigned on to become a councillor for the town was to protect our agricultural land. And there were safety measures put into place to protect agricultural, to stop from development, using it for institutional purposes, using it for cemeteries. All that was stopped because agricultural land is constantly disappearing. So I'm of the opinion that we need to protect our agricultural land. The residents in the area have reached out to me saying, you know, you said that this is what you were here to do. So I just wanted to throw that to you, Thomas, if you could answer that. I've got a few other points I want to make, but I don't want to start throwing a whole bunch at you. So what is the proper zoning that should be there for cemeteries?
So generally, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Ferragini, generally speaking, the zoning that would permit places of worship or cemeteries would be the rural zone. And in some situations, they're only permitted if they existed prior to the passing of the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes up on the report, because this is agricultural land and it's completely surrounded by agricultural land. So it doesn't, to me, it doesn't feel like it fits the area. Engineering raised some eyebrows, which was already mentioned by a few council members. The infrastructure is not in place to demand that kind of traffic. The utilities are not in place for the type of building that is looking to be built here. You know, again, I just wanted to go back to, it'll be interesting to see how the report is put together just because of the agricultural land. I know that there's a whole bunch of holding companies that own agricultural land in our area. And I don't want to set a precedent with zoning changes on the agricultural, because as soon as you open that floodgate, it won't stop. We have constantly had applications come forward to develop on agricultural land, which have been turned down. There have been so many things that have come forward that have been turned down. So as soon as we open that gate, we're in for a lot of trouble with our agricultural land. We're already dealing with what's going on with the cannabis crisis right now, we'll call it, with all the greenhouses and everything that we're dealing with there. So we're already losing land for different reasons. So thank you for your comments to the public. Thank you, Thomas, for answering the question, and I'll be looking forward to seeing how the report comes forward.
And sorry, just to correct myself, they are permitted in rural zones. It's in agricultural zones that they're only permitted if legally existed before the passing of the bylaw. I just wanted to correct that.
So to that point then, from my understanding, this property was put as an appeal because the zoning bylaw had already been put into place prior to the application going in. So now this is into appeal with the county. What stage is it at that point? And do we know what's going on with that appeal?
Yes, so I can provide some comments, and if Ryan wants to jump in as well, or David. My understanding from the county is that should council be in favor of this application and they can come to a favorable recommendation for the applicant, the county would settle the appeal with the applicants. That's my understanding of a very brief history I was given on it. If Ryan wanted to add on some additional information.
Or I can, Thomas, if you'd like, through you, Mr. Mayor. These lands, Councillor Farragon, date back. The community bought the lands in 2005. At the time, the zoning permitted a cemetery on the lands. They came forward at the same time when the town was bringing forward a new zoning bylaw to implement the official plan. The new zoning bylaw obviously has to conform to the official plan. So therefore, there was an issue in terms of the designation as agricultural and the zoning that would permit a cemetery. Working with council at the time in 2009, 2010 with Mr. McKnight, it was deferred, the zoning for that property. So it's not under appeal, it was deferred as part of that procedure, along with the Catholic Archdiocese across the street, who also purchased their lands many decades ago based on that old zoning. So we've been working with the county as well as planning staff, and the organization is a voluntary organization. They're not a professional cemetery company, so they don't have deep pockets. So it has taken many years to get to this point to submit the application. We have submitted a number of reports in support of the request, including an analysis of the town's rural land supply, which is primarily either hamlet areas or hazard lands, so not developable for cemetery purposes. Obviously, within urban areas, the land is very expensive and is better utilized for urban uses in terms of intensification as per the growth plan and the provincial policy statement. So we have looked at the lands, these lands specifically, and the Northlands, and the agricultural impact study looked at the soil capabilities of the site, and that there is a small portion at the north that is class 1 to 3. The rest, because of sloping and soil capabilities, would be falling into the rural category. So that is part of the reports that we have submitted. We will, relative to the other technical comments that have been received from engineering, we will review those and respond to them accordingly. We don't believe that there are major issues there that cannot be resolved either through additional analysis or some redesign work on the site. Thank you.
Thank you for the response, David. Excuse me. And that goes back to my other point about the agricultural land being developed, because previously we all know that agricultural land is one of the least expensive lands that you can buy. So you have a lot of, again, holding companies, developers, they've all scooped up a whole bunch of agricultural land in our area, just waiting for that moment. So that is one of my biggest concerns. And again, I wrote on my campaign is protecting our agricultural land. So it'll be, I'm looking forward to seeing that report that comes forward. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Councillor Ferragini. Councillor Baines and then Councillor Contois. Councillor Baines.
Your worship, most of my questions, I guess, are for the planning more than the actual developer. First, throughout the report and even the presentation tonight, my concern was always more so than the cemetery. There's this large central building and the staff and all that. So sometimes you call it a multi-purpose room. Sometimes you call it a visitation center. And sometimes you call it an event center. Underlying my question is, the corollary would be, I got big concerns with event centers, so I just played my hand that you better not answer that. Might be easy to take them one at a time because they're all over the map.
Thomas, do you want to answer?
Through your worship to Councillor Baines, it would be a multi-purpose facility for the hosting of receptions or the funeral events. So not an event center. My apologies for that.
Okay, next question. I want to call them events. How many events do you anticipate per day? 2 per day?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Baines, I'm not aware of the number of funerals that would be held. That would be, I'd have to defer that to the applicant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Baines, on average, there are approximately 5 to 8 deaths per month in the community. And those funerals are attended on Fridays, if they can be. And approximately on average, there's approximately 50 people attending those events. Obviously, some of the more respected members of the community would draw a larger group.
Thank you. Next question. 14.9 acres. Are we building the biggest one north of Toronto or in Ontario? It just seems extra huge. I grew up on a farm. I didn't farm, but grew up on one. 10-acre field's a 10-acre field. So I'm picture 1.5 of those, and that is one big area.
So the size of the facility has been based on the longer term need for the facility. It is in line with a number of newer cemeteries in terms of sizes. I can get those exact figures if they're in our report, but typically they look at 10 to 15 acres for that long-term burial needs of the community.
Thank you. And what's the intended use of the rest of the property at this point?
My client doesn't have any plans at this point. When they were purchased, they were looking at different options, as Mr. McKnight may recall. Obviously, those fell by the wayside as part of the discussions that were ongoing, and then the additional environmental testing in terms of hydrogeological determined that the north portion of the site was only usable for cemetery purposes. So it would remain agricultural at this time, and they do have their occasional events in the summer through a special occupancy permit, is my understanding.
Okay, I've been at the site sometimes when there's, it's a compliment, not an insult, quite a few people there on a Saturday, whether it's youth boys or whatever. I was going to ask about septic, like you also, depends, I guess, if it's an event center or not and all those other questions, but
yeah, so
septic plans are thought of, in place?
There is facilities there today, obviously, for the existing building, and we have submitted reports detailing what would be required for the septic and well system, and those would be sized accordingly to the size of the buildings as per the Ontario Building Code.
Okay, last question. Somebody brought up traffic before, but my main concern, knowing where the curve is and the road and everything else, one entrance off of the 10th Side Road for a lot of cars. Doesn't sound that safe to me, especially from people coming from the south. They can see it, but the ones coming from the north over the hill, sometimes you're going too fast to see it, I guess. I'll leave it at that. Any comments about the selection of the entrance?
It was the current, we're utilizing the current entrance location. I've noted the safety concern and we'll address that as part of the response back to town and county staff. Determine if that's the appropriate location or if it should be moved elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baines. Councillor Contois. And then Councillor Dykey afterwards. So Councillor Contois.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And listen, I'm a firm believer that everybody's entitled to a proper burial. Whether, doesn't matter what you are. I'm Native Indian. I have my own beliefs. Catholic Church, I remember when this first came to council, it was combined with the Catholic Church burial grounds as well as the Amadeus. And forgive me if I don't know everything about your culture, but I do want to ask a few questions because I think Councillor Lamb brought it up. Land is expensive and we will run out of land eventually for burial grounds and other things, and that means you will be using farmlands to make things happen. So is there, I guess in your beliefs, I guess there would be no cremation or like a cremation plot. I'm not sure, that's why I'm asking.
That's correct, there is no cremation, sir.
Okay, so it's unfortunate that doesn't occur because, like I said, land is being used up, and let's face it, burial grounds, we're going to have to all be buried eventually. I'm in favor of the application, but I'm not in favor of the caretaker's residence or some other functionalities or within their plan. I believe you, Gary, you're bang on. The entrance needs to be addressed. I think it might be better suited in a different location. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll see what comes back.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Contois. Councillor Dykey.
Yeah, I must say it was very interesting to sit back and listen to all the various comments and the presentation. I'd like to thank the AMJ. I think that, they've been very active in our community with the run and helped out financially with the library and many different events in our community. A few interesting points. I just wanted to question to David McKay there. Years ago, I guess this goes back to 8 years ago, there was a proposal of a house of worship, a building of 42,000. Now I see that you scaled it down to, was it 9,000, just under 10,000 square feet. I just want to ask you what changed that aspect of things. Number two, I think I've taken the funeral. I think it lasted an hour in the funeral course at Humber College. I couldn't make it until the first break when it came to funerals business. I understand the aspect of the business. To get into technical terms, and I feel uncomfortable answering this question, but I just want to know this a little detail. How do you prepare the agricultural lands for protecting the grounds, the water tables, and everything? The Catholic cemeteries and Mount Pleasant and United cemeteries. We have coffins and we have the big concrete boxes available, and I just wanted to know how does the Muslims, and I could ask Raj as well with the Sikhs, so how different the mechanicals of the grave, like how does that dealt with in the ground environmentally wise? I'm just quite curious. I didn't have the chance to reach out to other colleagues in Brampton and different areas how this happens. And on the other point, I respect the fact, the residents have the right to have opportunity and the worship, that they have this opportunity in the area. And I just wanted to know, I feel I have a few concerns with the water capacity, the sewage capacity, the environmental of agricultural land. There's a few things that this report, I'd like to get some more information before I make my final comments. Like it says, we are going to run out of space everywhere. All the cemeteries, I think, in the years to come, there's going to be a shortage at some point. We have to, even though we have extra land in Mount Pleasant and the Catholic cemetery, at one point we'll have to look at Middletown as well and revisit as our community grows tremendously in the years to come. In the next 50 years, next 5 decades, this has to be addressed. But if you can give me some insight into some of the questions I brought up now.
Sure. I don't know the technicalities of the actual burials, but I do understand that it would be similar to what happens at a Christian or other cemetery, non-denominational, in terms of the burial component. There are regulations that we would need to meet in terms of provincial regulations under the Cemeteries Act, so we will be following all of those. I've written those notes down and can confirm additional details in terms of the hydrogeology and whatnot with regards to the actual burial plots and how that is dealt with. We'll answer that through back to staff. Relative to the well and septic, again, we've provided reports to staff. They've asked for clarifications and some additional information, and we'll provide that and make sure that the septic and well have the capacity to deal with the facilities that are ultimately built on the property if approval is granted. And we'll get back to staff through to provide that additional information. Relative to the original proposal, going back 10 plus years, dates me a bit now, which kind of I'm sad to hear, as well as a number of other councillors and staff. So when Ahmadiyya, as I had mentioned, bought the property, it was zoned for a cemetery. It was zoned under the old zoning for a church. It was permitted for a number of those facilities. So at the time when they purchased the property, they were under the belief that they could undertake a number of those facilities on the property, and that's what the plans that came forward that you're recalling portrayed. We worked with Mr. McKnight at the time, understood the concerns of town and county staff, and went back to the drawing board and came, over the last number of years, working with them, working with the various consultants on studies, to make a proposal that really trimmed down to the exact needs that the community had, which was the cemetery. And so that's why the facility that you see before you is specifically for that cemetery. And in terms of the multi-purpose facility for the visitation, an area that has been sized down to 10,000 square feet to accommodate those various functions, the separation between male and female as per the cultural requirements, and the prayer room and things like that. So we've tried to scope it down as much as possible, have it set back into the property to preserve that rural character as much as possible. And we'll continue to work with staff to refine the application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mackay. Any other members of council wish to comment? I'll just make a comment that I do believe members of our community should be able to bury loved ones close by. As Mr. Walker commented, the first person to speak, that we do have different religious groups that do have cemeteries in our community. I'll maybe mimic Councillor Lamb a little bit. I had a 4 great-grandfather that donated land in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, for a church and cemetery for the Lutheran sect. And then I had a 3 great-grandfather in Vaughan Township that gave land for a cemetery, and it's still there. I went down and visited on the weekend, and many Keffers are buried in that cemetery. And there is a peacefulness, there is a cultural need to be able to go and visit your ancestors, your loved ones, people of your family and friends. And I think that we all realize that as members of council, that members of our community do deserve that. But saying that, we do realize there are challenges with this application as it is, that on land that is zoned agriculture, as Councillor Ferragini has said, and our agricultural land is very important to our community. So I think it'll be up to our staff and Mr. Mackay to wrestle with the restrictions that we do have with the provincial policy statement and the places to grow document, that whether it has been relaxed with the new government that we have at the provincial level, and whether there is an opportunity to move this forward, so that as we have said, that we are returning this application back to staff. As has been commented, we have had numerous emails, both in support and some of people that do have concerns. And I don't want to diminish that the amount of work, the amount of feeling that went into the emails that we received. And as Councillor Sandu has said, that we do thank you for those, and we realize that they are legitimate issues, good and bad, that we did hear from the members of the community. So that I'll just open it up to members of council again. Does anybody have any further input at this time? Otherwise, I will read off that further action. So council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for a further recommendation report at a later date. So I do have a recommendation that report DES 2020-27 be received, and that the comments received in writing and are made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and address same in its recommendation report. So can I have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Sandu, Councillor Contois. Any further comments or questions? I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor of receiving the report? Opposed? It is carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
So thank you, Mr. Mackay and Thomas. And that is the first part of the public meeting. And now we're moving on to item 4.4. So it's a public information meeting, application for draft plan, a subdivision, approval and zoning bylaw amendment. And the owner applicant is 2393323 Ontario Incorporated, Lyons Estates. The agent is Groundswell Urban Planners, care of Lucila Sandoval. And the address is 266 Barrie Street, files number D12-17-01 and D14-17-02. So planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the application being presented by staff represents the applicant's development proposal. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. So with that, I'll turn it over to our planner, Brandon Slopak. So Brandon.
Thank you, Mayor Keffer. Good evening, council and members of the public. Thank you for attending this evening's meeting for 2266 Barrie Street. I would like to start by providing an overview of tonight's presentation. I will discuss the purpose of the public meeting, introduce the applicant's proposal, outline the public notice process, provide a detailed overview of the application, and share some concluding remarks and next steps. If you want to comment or receive notification of when this file will be examined by council, please send an email to planninginfo@townofbwg.com. Please make sure you include your full name and municipal address. The purpose of tonight's public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council and public and to invite questions and seek input. Once an application is deemed complete, the town is obligated under the Planning Act to hold a public meeting. Staff are in the process of completing a detailed review of the proposal, and council will not make any decisions on the application tonight. The matter will be referred back to staff to consider the results of the public meeting and review comments received through the circulation process. Staff will then report to council with a recommendation at a later date once the comprehensive review has taken place. Now I will give a bit of background on the file. So this file was originally presented to council and residents in October of 2017. At that time, the proposal was for 16 street townhouses on a cul-de-sac. There were a number of comments and concerns from the public and council at that time. The largest concern being the lack of separation between the townhouses and cul-de-sac bulb to the existing properties on Stoddard Court. In response to these comments, the applicant has submitted this evening's plan, which is for 13 stacked townhouses, which front onto Barrie Street. The zoning bylaw amendment seeks to rezone the property from the R1-1 zone to the R2-2 exception zone. This is in order to enable stacked townhouses with site-specific provisions. So on the screen above is an image of the site plan as proposed. It consists of the following: 30 stacked townhouse dwellings in 8 blocks fronting onto Barrie Street, an amenity area in the rear yard, a garbage collection area on the right side in the right side yard, a landscaping buffer and 6-foot tall fence along the perimeter of the property. This includes a treed 4-meter buffer along the rear property line. Regarding parking and access, there is a single two-way access off of Barrie Street into the development. There is a total of 70 parking spaces, 34 surface spaces, including 3 accessible spaces, and 36 underground spaces, which are accessed via a parking ramp on the left side, in the left side yard. So this is the proposed underground parking plan, just to give you a glimpse. So this above image is a color rendering of the front elevation. This is a image of the rear elevation. And this is what the side elevation looks like. Regarding the public notice process, signage was confirmed installed on the property on March 3rd by the applicant. And as prescribed by the Planning Act, notice of public meeting was mailed to all property owners assessed within 120 meters of the property. Also, notice was placed in the March 12th and May 7th editions of the Bradford Topic. I will note that the public meeting was originally scheduled for April 7th, but rescheduled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now to give an overview of the subject lands and area. The property is located on the west side of Barrie Street, just north of the Barrie-Fletcher intersection. The property has a lot area of about 4,718 square meters and includes a single detached dwelling. Surrounding the property, to the north are single detached dwellings fronting onto Barrie Street. To the south, there are single detached dwellings fronting onto Barrie Street, and a little further south is the Fred C. Cook Public School. To the west is the Stoddard Court subdivision consisting of single detached homes. Across the street on the east side is the Exhale Spa. the recently approved bungalow development at 263 Barrie, and Lions Park. Lastly, I would note that the subject property is in proximity to the GO station, bus stops, grocery, pharmacy, parks, schools, and the downtown. Above is an image of the official plan mapping for the area. The property is within the Bradford urban area and is designated residential. The residential designation permits the following: a mix of residential dwelling types, home-based businesses, accessory uses, open spaces, institutional uses, and neighborhood commercial. The proposal is requesting a density of 67.91 units per hectare. The town's official plan provides the following density ranges. Low density is 24 units per hectare, medium density is 40 units per hectare, and high density is 75 units per hectare. Above is a map identifying the existing zoning for the area. The map identifies the site with a red outline, and it shows that it is zoned R1-1. Under the R1-1 zoning, only lower density residential housing types and supportive services are permitted. Stacked townhouses are not a permitted use in this zone. Just to give an overview of the area, looking at the map, yellow primarily represents low density residential zones, green represents commercial, and purple primarily represents institutional and open space zones, at least on this map. You can see that the surrounding area is primarily yellow and zoned R1-1, but directly across the street there is 281 Barrie Street, which is zoned R3 exception, and 263 Barrie Street, which is zoned R2-2 exception. Above is the zoning bylaw amendment request. The applicant is requesting permission to rezone the lands from R1-1 to R2-2 exception. The requested R2-2 zoning would do the following. It would permit the above set of performance standards, permit stacked townhouses, and permit 3 site-specific requests. Number 1, the first request is that the applicant is requesting permission to reduce minimum lot area per dwelling unit to 147.26 square meters, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum lot area per dwelling unit of 170 square meters per unit. Number 2, the applicant is requesting permission to increase the maximum height limit to 14.33 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw has a maximum height limit of 11 meters. Number 3, the applicant is requesting permission to reduce the total required parking spaces to 70, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 75 spaces. Now I will give a summary of comments to date, or start giving a summary. The subject application was originally circulated for review on January 19th. The following agencies have no objections or concerns. The next 2 slides show comments received from inter and outside agencies. The fire department had a number of questions and clarifications relating to building code and fire routes. And the bylaw enforcement division believes that the development must be self-sufficient in terms of parking. And they also reminded that proper accessibility and fire signage will need to be implemented at the site plan stage. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority requested an updated response matrix to assist in their technical review. And the County of Simcoe provided the following comment. It is in the county's opinion that the new proposal conforms with the provincial and county policies and may serve as an example of what these policies seek to encourage within settlement boundaries. Now I'm going to go over the public comments that have been received to date. I believe there are 7 or 8. Marino Patoko of 292 Barrie Street is in support of support of the application. He believes it is an appropriate form of development since it fronts onto Barrie Street and it is within a municipal service area, believes it provides a form of more affordable housing, and that it is within the residential built-up area designation as identified in the town's draft official plan. Thomas Schnickel of 103 Compton Crescent is opposed to the application. He believes the project will reduce privacy on their lots, particularly backyards. He believes the development will hurt property values. He also wants to ensure infrastructure, including servicing and emergency services, can handle the additional load of 30 dwellings. And he also noted Barrie Street is an important emergency route that shouldn't be compromised. Penelope Mignot of 23 Stoddard Court is opposed to the application. She did not believe public consultation for this application should have gone through this virtual form, since residents cannot show up in force in the same manner as you could in person. In regards to the application, height and she had concerns regarding height and density. She believes the proposal is too tall and dense for the low density neighborhood. She feels the proposal will negatively change the view and vista going down the street. The proposal will negatively impact privacy of Stoddard Court. It does not fit the community character. Other items included that she feels that the proposal should not stray so far from existing zoning and need to request as many exceptions as it did. Additionally, she is concerned with noise and fumes associated with parking. She felt that the garbage collection area is too close to the lot line and will cause nuisance. She's concerned that the construction will cause damage to nearby foundations, pools, trees, and could cause flooding onto Compton Crescent. And she felt that she wanted to know who would be responsible for any possible damages. She wants to know where servicing is coming from, as she feels that water pressure is already low in the area. And she believes that underground parking could cause safety concerns in the future. And she had two final comments. Additionally, she believes that the development will reduce property values. And she's concerned that an increase in traffic and congestion will be created due to this development, particularly at Barrie and Fletcher during rush hour. And she noted that Fred C. Cook Public School is already very busy in the morning, and felt that this development could contribute to or create backups onto Barrie Street. Noble Carlton of 22 Stoddard Court is opposed to the application. He does not believe the proposal visually fits with Stoddard Court. He believes that the development will reduce property value. He believes the garbage collection area will become a nuisance. And he thinks that this property should remain R1-1 and that this is a single detached dwelling area. Cheryl Quizzy of 26 Stoddard Court is opposed to this application. She believes that the proposal does not complement the neighborhood. She had a number of height concerns. She believes it will reduce privacy and enjoyment of the rear yards on Stoddard Court. That morning light will be blocked, and that this development will create a walled feeling and change the atmosphere of the neighborhood. Other items, she felt that the garbage collection area is too close to the lot line. She is concerned about the health of private trees, and that construction and excavation will create dust and nuisance. And lastly, her preference would be for this property to remain a low density development fronting onto Barrie Street with comparable heights to the area. Christine Pereira of 28 Stoddard Court is opposed to the application. She had a number of privacy concerns as it relates to height. She felt this would reduce her privacy. Particularly, she was concerned about the possibility of overlook as her kids play in the backyard. She noted that she purchased this property in part because of the privacy that it brought. Also, she has other safety concerns. She is concerned that the parking area is too close to the Stoddard Court backyard, and that a driver error could result in somebody driving through the fence into the backyard, which would be a danger. She's concerned that the parking area will produce dangerous fumes in the backyards. Other items included that she's concerned about snow being stored and plowed against the fence, and that when it melts, that may cause flooding onto Stoddard Court. She was concerned about the impact of construction on private properties and trees. And lastly, she mentioned that the trees currently located on 266 Barrie Street, which will be removed, had contributed to beneficial views from her property. Stan Rosenberger of 29 Stoddard Court was in opposition to the application. He has a number of height concerns, that it will reduce their privacy, it will reduce enjoyment of the backyards and how they were currently utilized. The height could reduce sunlight, which would impact growth of their gardens. Other items included that it doesn't fit in with the quiet and private character of the neighborhood. He believes development will reduce his property value, and he believes this development will create light and noise pollution and increase traffic. Additionally, he is concerned that the commercial garbage bins may cause odor and spread of rodents. He notes that the elevation slope towards his property, and he has concerns related to drainage, snow removal, and his property in general during construction. And lastly, he believes that this property should remain low density and not change for R1-1 zone. And he would support a 2-story building that meets low density requirements. Damien Pillai of 30 Stoddard Court is opposed to this application. He believes that the development will reduce privacy on Stoddard Court, that it will reduce property values, and that the garbage collection area is too close to the lot line and could cause odor and spread of rodents. Lastly, he's concerned that private trees and roots could be damaged during the construction and excavation of this project. I will now make some final remarks. As noted before, once an application is deemed complete, the town is obligated to hold a public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council, to public, and to invite questions and seek input that will help staff and council review and consider the application. Staff have not completed this review yet, and council will not make any decisions tonight. At this point, the application will be referred back to staff to consider the results of tonight's meeting, to review comments received through the circulation process, and to evaluate the merits of the proposal. At a later date, once a comprehensive review has taken place, staff will report back to council with a recommendation. Until that point, the public can submit comments. To close, for members of the public who wish to comment or receive future notifications when this application will be considered by council, please send an email to planninginfo@townofbwg.com. The applicant is in attendance this evening to answer any questions council or the public may have on this application. And at this point, I'll pass back on to Mayor Keffer for the meeting to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. So we do have people from Groundswell Urban Planners. We have Brad Rogers and I guess Lucilla Sandoval. So I'll turn it over to Brad. I see you're there. So do you want to continue on with the presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council for the opportunity to do our first public meeting online. If we could go to the next slide, please. So my name is Brad Rogers, and I'm an urban planner at Groundswell Urban Planners. I'm here with Lucilla Sandoval, my business partner. We've been working for the developer of this property for a number of years. We appeared before you October 17th, 2017, And after that meeting, we went back to our client. We talked about the project and the concerns that we heard from both members of council and the public. And we've had a number of meetings with planning staff. If we could just go to the next slide, please. It's a little clearer to see. So this is the colored site plan or colored concept plan. And as I hope I don't duplicate a lot of things that Brandon said, but in total, we're proposing here is 30 dwelling units, which would range in square footage from anywhere from 1,450 square feet to 3,250 square feet. And this is a built form called a stack product. And I don't believe it's been built in Bradford. We have worked on a number of these projects, so one in Aurora, and we're working on one right now in Newmarket. Just to explain some of the highlights of the site plan and how things have changed from the last concept, there's still one access from Barrie Street. From Barrie Street, the development would look like 8 large townhouses is really what it would look like. From Barrie Street, there would be direct access points to some of the dwellings. And there's also some direct access points in the parking lot from the west side as well. We have 31 above ground parking spaces, 3 handicap parking spaces, and some underground parking for a total of 70 parking spaces that we're proposing. Something that we heard loud and clear from the residents on Stoddard Court in the last presentation was to move the built form away from their property line. And we have done that. We have also proposed, you'll see on the plan there, a 4-meter landscape buffer at the west end. And there's some extensive landscaping being proposed in that area. On the driveway coming into the property, we have some green space that ranges in width from 4.9 meters close to Barrie Street up to 9.5 meters as we go farther west. We do have an amenity and a space area in the west and the south corner of the plan that will provide some amenities for the residents with some benches and some shrubs. And right behind that area is our underground parking ramp that would go down, and there would be underground parking underneath the units. At the Barrie Street frontage and on the west frontage, what we have an urban landscape planter boxes, both for the entrances off Barrie Street and for some of the entrances from the west to the townhouses. In addition to that, one other item I wanted to note on the site plan was that there is a proposed fence that would buffer the development from any of the surrounding neighborhood. That wood fence would range from 1.5 meters to 1.8 meters, which I believe is the town standard. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is the visualization and the look from Barrie Street. So as I said, it would look like 8 townhomes. This is a modern, clean architecture with lots of windows and light penetration that would come into the units. There are 4 access points here for the underground parking, and the balconies that look onto Barrie Street are proposed small balconies. There's 8 in total from the second floor only. Next slide, please. So this is the rear elevation, and there are a total of 8 doors, which would be entrances for the lower units. There's a total of 8 balconies, which would be on the second floor as well as the Barrie Street side as well. There are no balconies at all on the 3rd level. And there would be some parking for residents adjacent to their units on the west side for the lower units as well. So that's an elevation of the rear of the building that's proposed. Next slide, please. So in our discussions after the last statutory public meeting, we talked a lot about moving the built form away from the residents on Stoddard. And this is a cross section that we produced showing a typical two-story dwelling on Stoddard and the elevation cross section of the building that we're proposing, which is the four-story stacked dwellings. And we're showing the 45-degree angular plane from the dwelling unit, even the 45-degree angular plane from the property line does not interfere with our development. And what we're not showing here, but I'm sure that people would recognize is the 1.8 meter fence, wood fence that we would put, plus the extensive landscaping that we would buffer the development from that. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. So just wanted to summarize basically what we've done in the last couple of years from the last concept plan to this concept plan is we've moved the built form closer to Barrie Street, and the built form from our property line to the start of the dwelling is about 27 meters, almost 90 feet. And that does include a 4-meter landscape buffer with some extensive planting. We do have underground parking and parking at grade. And we have tried hard to eliminate all of the site-specific exemptions. One of the exemptions that we talked to our architect about today was the parking requirement. We do think we can meet the parking, so we would not have an exemption there. We do, this development, unlike the previous one, would have private garbage collection and private snow removal. We believe that the visual impacts of this latest concept are minimized with respect to the vegetation and the greater separation from the property line versus the last concept plan that was presented to the public. We believe that this concept creates a better pedestrian environment for the Barrie Street frontage. And this is a newer built form of development that is reasonably priced. And we believe that it is very desirable for new home purchasers who want to live in this form of development. That concludes my speaking notes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and we're pleased to answer any questions that anyone from the public or council may have with respect to this development proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. So that next up is the public participation. We do have members of the public who have registered with the clerk prior to the start of the meeting tonight, and they will be given an opportunity to speak. So I'll ask our clerk, Rebecca Murphy, to introduce the first speaker.
Certainly, Your Worship. First speaker tonight is Cheryl Queasy.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns in regards to the proposal for 266 Barrie Street. Our complaint has been logged and was part of Mr. Slopak's presentation, but I thought it was really important that you heard our concerns directly as well about the request to amend the rezoning of this property from a residential 1 to a residential 2 exception. So we live on Stoddard Court and our house backs directly onto this lot on the northwest side. This court is a well sought after location, and we bought here specifically for the quiet, low density atmosphere that the houses in this neighborhood offer. The backyard was the main reason why we chose this house specifically 12 years ago. We spend all of our time in our backyard from early spring to late fall. We have an in-ground pool and a deck where we work, we play, we entertain, we relax, and we really just enjoy. We have an in-ground pool, and this high-density 47-foot tall stacked townhouse proposal creates a substantial and intolerable privacy issue. With a number of people living in this building and with balconies, windows, and doors designed all along the back, all those people will be staring down at us. You saw that rear elevation. I counted them. There's actually 64 windows, doors, and balconies along that back elevation. 64. Our privacy will be absolutely gone. Sunlight will be blocked for a portion of the morning into our yard. And this is just far too high for the type of residential area that we live in. There are no other buildings at this height that fall within the vicinity. It will feel like it's looming over us, and it will be visible at all times, even as we drive down our own street. We'll have a walled-in feeling to the community, and it will dramatically impact the value of our homes. The other concerns we have with this proposal include obviously the very large garbage collection area that has now been planned close to our lot line, and it's required because of such a high density proposal. This is not acceptable. To have the smell, rodents, bugs, everything that go with such a large area so close to our property, in the summer months, it will be unbearable. We wouldn't wish this on any of our neighbors either by moving the location. We are still extremely concerned about our mature trees. With the excavation of an underground parking lot now and the amount of construction required for such a large building, the health of our irreplaceable oak and black walnut trees that enhance our backyard will still be at an extremely high risk. We're also very concerned with the health and cleanliness of our pool during the construction period. I realize it will have to endure some construction, but the normal construction of a row of regular height detached homes is a lot less evasive than the construction of a large towering building and the excavation of an underground parking lot. And now, to accommodate this high amount of people, a large parking lot is now planned, and it's been located at the back of the building against our fence. There will be car lights shining directly into our bedroom windows at all times of the night as people park, and noise throughout the night as people come and go from the parking lot. A 6-foot fence is just not going to stop this. So where will the snow fall when they plow the lot? Against our fence? Well, how long will our fence last then? And what happens when it melts? Do our properties flood? Will a car drive through our fence? What kind of delinquent activities will take place in such a hidden location that will be just outside our door? There's so many issues and so many concerns. And think about this. The only positive comment from the public that's been received for this plan so far is from the owner of 292 Barrie. That's the White House that's directly beside this lot that's sitting empty with broken glass. This comes from someone who's not even living there any longer and has his home up for lease or sale for development. We are imploring you, do not improve this plan and do not change the zoning from residential 1. It was zoned like that for a reason. It fits into our neighborhood. Put detached homes there, match the height of our homes. Have backyards back onto our backyards. Keep our privacy as it was meant to be. An R2 exception does not fit into our neighborhood that we all paid a lot of money to be a part of and that we love. It will have a tremendous negative impact on our way of life, our home, and on a very large, well-established community within Bradford. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, thank you, Cheryl. So Rebecca, do you want to introduce the next speaker?
Next up is Penelope Vinot.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for hearing me tonight. I realize Brandon said a lot of my points, but I would really like to reiterate them. I live on Stoddart at number 23. First of all, I'd like to voice my displeasure at the online format of this meeting. I was at the last meeting concerning this proposal in 2017, and the citizen show of support was large. The impact of that is not visible here, and so I feel it detracts from our arguments and concerns. This could easily have waited until after the lockdown, as it's been since 2017, or we could have had the meeting in one of the community centers where it would have been possible to sit 6 feet apart. So the building is huge, and the name stacked townhouses to me is just semantics. It's an apartment building by any other name. We, the citizens, strongly voice our objections to the last proposal of 16 homes with a height of 11 meters. So why on earth would a good compromise be 30 units at a height of 14.33 meters? This is high density housing in the neighborhood of low density homes. I, for one, do not want to drive up my now beautiful street and look at that monstrosity. I fail to see why a project that needs that many exceptions to the bylaws as this one should even be considered. Bylaws are there for a reason. The designers of this building have not taken any heed of any of the concerns we expressed the last time, that seem to be going even bigger. Anyone living in the homes backing onto it would no longer have any reasonable expectation of privacy in their own backyards or windows for that matter. 64 windows looking down on you is ridiculous. The underground parking shows us that the entrance would be at the back, so all those back gardens would have cars driving behind them with the noise and gas fumes associated with that, not to mention above ground parking with cars idling, especially in the winter. Everybody has mentioned the garbage dumpsters, but I also noted that, and the thought of rats is just disgusting. Construction that large with underground parking means a very large hole going quite deep. There's a good chance this could cause damage to foundation and pools that back onto this. Who will pay for any and all damage? This will probably kill most of the old growth trees back there. Who will pay to take down dead trees in neighbors' yards? This could also lead to flooding to homes down below in Compton. Where are the utilities coming from? We already have fairly low water pressure because I believe we're at the end of the run here on Compton and Stoddard. Underground parking is always a safety concern, as we all know. I believe this will cause my property value to drop. Will I see a reduction in my property taxes? I doubt it. This building will have absolutely no community value whatsoever. While the view from Barrie Street is not awful, that certainly did not translate to the back or the west view. I also have a serious concern regarding the amount of traffic this will lead to at rush hour. The intersection at Barrie and Fletcher Northgate is a major residential artery. Fred C. Cook is right there with a very busy school crossing. I can only imagine the traffic in the morning as people are trying to get out on a single lane road and kids are crossing. The same will happen at night. Cars trying to enter the building will be doing so just after the lights at Fletcher and cause traffic to back up down Barrie. In conclusion, I would like to say that as a 22-year resident, I would like to believe that my council is standing up for the existing residents of Bradford and not pandering to the greed of builders who really have no vested interest in our community, except for the amount of money they can make before they head off to other towns and try to do the same thing there. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vigneault. So Rebecca, do you want to introduce the next speaker?
Certainly. Next up is Donna Gustafson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council. And also, I thank Mr. Rogers for his appearance this evening. It is important that he and the developer also hear what I and my neighbors have to say about this reiteration of a proposed high-density build at 266 Barrie Street. The developer is asking to change zoning for this parcel from R11 to R22. I do understand this council agrees in principle to the rezoning of this parcel and has the support of rezoning from the staff of the town. And therefore, I believe there will be eventually an affirmative vote to approve an R22 designation. But along with the rezoning, the developer is asking for certain exemptions from our bylaws, agreeing that this site should be rezoned to allow a multi-unit build does not and should not mean disregarding other specific bylaws mandating minimum lot area per unit, maximum height, and required number of parking spots per unit. I acknowledge and appreciate this second proposal reorients the proposed build to Barrie Street. That was a good first step. I acknowledge and appreciate this second proposal increases the distance of the proposed build from the adjacent low-rise, low-density neighborhood, which is Stoddard Court. I acknowledge and appreciate this second proposal recognizes that private property trees should not be damaged or destroyed, and that an attempt is made to preserve and protect these private trees. I further acknowledge that the additional landscape proposal submitted is an additional attempt to address the strenuous objections and very serious concerns expressed at the first public meeting. Although I do wonder what will happen after the first landscape plantings die off from the carbon monoxide emissions from the proposed 70 parking spots and whatever attempts have to be made to remove snow to take it off-site each winter. I think that the developer in its second submission should be quoted. It states that it has, quote, sought to be responsive to the existing neighborhood character of the area, unquote. I think we should all hold the developer to this explicitly acknowledged sentiment. But why didn't the developer listen to all of the concerns? Why have they turned a deaf ear to the concerns about density? And why then is this second proposal more dense and at a vastly greater height than the first proposal? In its decision to grant a rezoning application to allow for a multi-unit development, there are three available options. The first is low density, the second medium density, the third high density. For this particular parcel, low density would be up to 10 dwelling units, medium density up to 17, high density up to 33 dwelling units for this size parcel. The first proposal was 16 dwelling units, which is the lower end of high density. This at 30 dwelling units is at the high end of high density. Policy is that residential intensification is only supported where it will not adversely affect the character of the area. Policy is that overdevelopment should not occur. Policy is that development is allowed where it does not adversely affect the neighbors. The town has an excess of currently zoned building sites to exceed the projections for population growth, and any rezoning from R1 to R2 to add a multi-unit development on this site would only serve to increase the excess now available. Taking into consideration all of the adverse consequences noted by my friends and neighbors, any desire by the town staff to see a higher density at this location must be well tempered. Did the developer not hear Councillor Cantois' comment that the plan was too aggressive? Did they not hear Councillor Sandhu's comment that the development should not be at the price of the current residents? Did they not hear Councillor Orr's comment that the proposal needed less density? Did they not hear Councillor Dykey's comment that the proposal should not have a negative impact on the residents? Did they not hear Councillor Ferragini's comment that even if the zoning changed, he wanted to see them stay with the bylaws? The first exemption reduces the required 170 square meters minimum lot area to only 147.26 square meters per dwelling unit. This is an over 13% deviation in the minimum standards. While our neighborhood may exceed the current minimum standards for minimum lot area, it is unconscionable to even consider a proposal that does not meet the current minimum standards. That would be totally incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The request for the exemption for the height maximum to propose to build to 14.33 meters, which is 47 feet for those of you who are of the school that still uses inches and feet. It's a 30% increase over the maximum allowed. The distancing of the development from the lot lines of immediate neighbors, while welcome, does not provide adequate transition and separation from the adjacent low-rise, low-density neighborhood, which is Stoddard Court. Stoddard Court runs from east to west. Anyone driving down Stoddard Court will see nothing but a 4-story building looming high in the east. The developer also requests that it be exempted from the bylaw requiring minimum parking spaces. Although I heard Mr. Rogers say tonight they could probably, in consultation with their architect, meet the current bylaw requirement. Even said, the shortfall was 5 parking spots. It may seem small, but what is the impact of having 36 cars idling underground and 34 or 39 cars idling above ground each cold winter day? What is the impact of 30 households leaving for work or coming home from work? What is the impact of a heavy snowfall and the need to take all snow removal offsite, as there is no provision for on-site storage? There is no reason the developer should be exempted from meeting the bylaw standards. If we all need to compromise to reach 266 Barrie Street, who needs to travel furthest, compromise most? The residents and neighbors on Stoddard Court, the council who live within our town limits, or the developer who comes in from away and then leaves once again the development is built? It is my opinion, and should be yours, that the onus is on the developer to prove that a higher density is appropriate and can conform to the existing neighborhood without creating significant adverse effects on the existing residents. That cannot be done with the current proposed height and density of this submission. And in consideration of the time that I really did need to convey all of my thoughts to you, my dear husband, John Patsalides, concedes the time he would have otherwise taken tonight to discuss this matter with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Donna. So Rebecca, do you want to introduce the next speaker?
No, I believe I heard Donna say that John has given his time to Donna and will not be speaking. Can you just confirm that, please, Donna?
I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you very much. That is our last registered speaker then on this matter. Thank you.
So Donna, did you want to say any more, or that was is all that you and John have to say? So that
I believe that
that's fine, Donna, that you finished your presentation.
I have finished what I'm going to say. I will provide slightly more detailed comments directly to Mr. Slopak via email.
Thank you.
And that's right. Any member of the public can forward an email with other comments to Mr. Slopak or any member of council, and we'll make sure our planning department has the information when they are preparing the report about this application. So that I will hand it over to our planning staff for Mr. Rogers. Are there comments that you wish to make now? We will be handing it over to members of council. I don't know, we could hand it over to members of council right now, and then we could hand it to our planning staff and afterwards. And I think maybe that's what we will do. We will hand it over to members of council for comments or questions at this time. So Councillor Contois, I'll hand the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I thank all the residents from Stoddard for their comments, first of all. I have concerns with why, I guess my first question is why, when we talked about the impact to the area, you did do one thing, you separated the building and moved it to the front onto Barrie Street. So you were listening there. But we talked about so many units in the area and conforming to the area and the height of the building. So normally, like a house in Bradford can be 11 meters, which is almost 3 stories. This is going beyond it. So you're asking to go from an R11 to an R22. Okay, so Simcoe County supported the R22 as long as we amend it to the R22, because right now it's an R11. And in the R11, it states that townhomes aren't even permitted. So they're already looking for exceptions. And the first thing they do is come and ask me for amendments to the exceptions. So I don't agree with your height. We had already discussed this at the last time we had a public consultation. I don't agree with the parking. You don't reduce parking. We have parking problems throughout Bradford, and every one of us councillors fight for those areas. So I heard you say you were going to bring it up to 75 spaces, which is the minimum. It's not extra, it's the minimum. So, you know, I'm looking at that. And then the square 147.26 square meters, and it should be 170 per dwelling unit. So you've hit that as well. I think there should be a sound barrier at the back of the property. A 6-foot fence isn't going to do anything. We talked about foliage at the back, so I see that with your landscaping designs, and by the way, I have all your designs here in front of me. Some of your landscaping is quite nice, to be honest with you. I understand the concerns with the residents for the entranceway right at the very back to the underground parking. I'm sure through engineering, you're going to make sure that the existing trees do not get damaged. I think your densities are too high. You went from 16 units to 30 units. Obviously, you didn't listen on that one. But I'll leave it at that, and other councillors probably have something to say. The other good thing I will point out, because I will point out the positives and the negatives. The entranceway was pushed over to enter into the property, so it is away from the intersection, which I believe is a proper separation, and that road can handle the traffic going onto there. But I do note that when we talked about 16 units being too much for the proposal, and it was a bulb the first time. I actually have a drawing here, but you probably can't see that. But it was a bulb that pushed to the rear of the property with units, 68 units on either side, and 16 units in total. So how did we go from 16 units to 30 units? And how did we go to exceeding 11 meters to 14 meters? It makes no sense. We talked about these specifically, and yet you choose to ignore it. So I will not support this, just so you know. Anyways, carry on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Contois. I see Councillor Lamb and then Councillor Ferragini.
Yeah, Mark, I agree with you. It's too high. It's like a bit of a planning game going on, and it usually happens. Okay, you got to do this, and then they push the angle that way. If they just looked at proper height, a story comes off that thing. Maybe you can put some bungalows inside it. Little less cars on the lot, little less people, but you might be able to create some housing forms that are needed in the community, and so it won't affect the sunlight or those kinds of things. I'm pleased that they moved it out towards Barrie Street. So I think they know. I think they were pushing some buttons here, and then they'll back off, and we'll say, "Good, we did our job," and then we're going to vote yes. And that's usually how things work, at least from my perspective. So I think things can be worked out here so that it doesn't impact people on Stoddard so greatly. The biggest problem we face as a municipality, we have urban boundaries that we can't exceed, and we have to fill out our official plan before we go out and build on somebody else's farm. And earlier in the evening, the emphasis was placed on saving agricultural land. Well, these kinds of things happening in the older section of town, where newer types of buildings and proposals will keep coming every year, and it'll be a little different here and a little different there. But ultimately, I think that we can work this out, and I think that this site can be worked out okay without affecting the neighbors too greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Councillor Ferragini.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you to all the residents and all the comments that were made, and I can completely hear and understand their frustrations and what's being brought forward. Originally, when this plan was brought forward, the same idea, I did support it in principle because of the location being right on Barrie Street, close to our transportation, close to parks, there's close to shopping. But again, I had asked why we couldn't just keep within the set bylaws. So same thing with the new plan. I mean, the new plan's completely changed. Again, in principle, I support the application just because we do need different style housing in our town. We do need different options for residents, but stick within the bylaws. Bring us something that you're actually keeping within the numbers that the bylaws request, and you won't have any issues, because you know we need the different mixed housing, and the location is great because it's right on Barrie Street. But we're just trying to go, well, you're just trying to go too far with it. So bring it back and do what's right and stick within the bylaws. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sandhu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank the applicant and the members of public that spoke. I also feel that some of the concerns are still there. Traffic, the height, you know, it says in the planning justification that the school will be taken off site. So are you trying to tell us that every time it's going to snow, there's going to be a truck lined up, filling up with snow and going somewhere else, or is it going to be pushed onto Barrie Street? You know, some of those things. Then the other thing I have is that this is being sold as that this is going to help, you know, many issues with residents in Bradford, whether seniors or seniors. There's no elevator. How are seniors going to get to those stairs with grocery bags and stuff? So this is not for seniors unless it's stated that only the first floor is for seniors. The design, the look, the elevations that I see on the Barrie Street, I like them. They look good. I have to give you that. But the other issues that were addressed, I think we've seen this with the other buildings that we had. You have to come up with a better, either with the trees, mature trees or something as a sound barriers or a obstruction, so it's you know, taller in the back and it's not towering over the properties in the back. Those are the issues you have to address. And I hope when this comes back that it shows that you have addressed them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sandhu. I see Councillor Baines and then Councillor Dykey. Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the main point here is we all agreed to infill and intensify. So as Councillor Lamb said a little while ago, let's figure out how to make this work, not figure out how to turn it down. I think we need this form of housing. I think some work's still got to be done. I agree with everybody there. But let's figure out how to make this one happen, not figure out why it can't. I've got to be positive on one like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Councillor Dykey.
First of all, am I on? Yes, I am. First of all, to all the comments the residents made, I concur with all your statements. At the end of the day, all your statements, I could visually see all these concerns, and but I have to take one step further. Now that the development with Serena Homes is going to occur across the road, Exdale Spa is going to develop with density. They're going to be coming in time with some density. If you're looking at this density at 15 or 30 units, I'm concerned about, or I'd like to see the traffic study in my hand, the professional traffic study. I have concerns about how the traffic you're looking at least 60 cars turning left or right onto Barrie, just one site. Then across the road, another 60 cars moving in and out. XL Spa could be another 80 in and out. So the traffic, I have some concerns with. The height of the project, I have real concerns with. And, it's a very high building. I've seen these buildings in Richmond Hill, now Vaughan. I know the stack houses are the big crave now in all of these communities. But all the sites I've seen, and I've taken note to this new modern design that's happening with this new density through other municipalities. But I don't see this kind of design backing onto residential homes like the nice homes we have on Sideroad Court. So I don't want to see that affect the neighbors. Now I'd like to see some other site plans from other municipalities that where these sites are approved and the neighborhoods that these are plotted in. But I don't think this is a fit for that density of 30 units that's backing onto Sideroad Court. I think this can be worked with still, lower density, and I still have concerns about the traffic going in and out of this one driveway going in and out. I'm not just looking at this site. I'm looking at the bigger picture of all the properties, and there's going to be more development to the south of this with another proposal I'm sure is going to come in. So I'm very cautious on this particular application, but I'd like to see a lot more work done to it. I don't want to see the residents impacted as they stated, the oak trees and the water drainage, the driveways. If I lived there, I would have the same concerns. And I'm speaking from a personal aspect of things, but these are all big concerns. If you took that site to a different area, it might work, but I have problems on Barrie Street for that site.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dykey. Councillor Orr.
I just want to comment based on the comment one of the residents made that I had said, and I still feel this development is too dense. Definitely is a lot more dense than what we first looked at. I do like the fact that it was pushed closer to Barrie Street, and I don't think it should be the number of stories that it is. I think it should be brought down. And but I'm hoping, was a comment made on idling cars today in basements, garages. Most of them are heated. You shouldn't be idling cars in the basements. And a lot of these new cars, they tell you not to be they don't need to idle and warm up. So you shouldn't be going down and letting them go. So I hope people wouldn't think that there's going to be all those residents are going to have the cars running outside warming up in the morning. But I just want to reiterate, I think it's still too dense, and bring it down a story.
Thank you, Councillor Orr, and Deputy Mayor Leduc.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to everybody, the residents and the planner, Mr. Rogers. Wonderful planning concept. It's just this is zoned R11, and in order for me to go to R2 exception with your exceptions that you want, you're gonna have to tell me better than this on that. I don't know if I can add any more comments to what other councillors have said already out there. I think the height is a concern with people, so I really think you need to look better. It's too bad. Like I think Councillor Dykey said it right. If this was on some other site, we'd be all over that one, because I do like the actual look of the build and everything, but it's just not located on the right site for now, as far as I'm concerned. So I hope you can go back to the drawing board and continue to work on that and work with our staff to see if you can come up with something that fits that site, meets the requirements of the residents, because Stoddard is a important street in our community. It's a well-established street. Compton's a well-established street. I've lived on Compton twice. They're beautiful communities. I wouldn't want to see those streets impacted by any development in that area of this size. So I think it's more of a very nice area to be in. It's got all mature trees. I know that development of that size will impact the roots no matter what. I think one of the residents picked up on it, that when the trees die a couple of years down the road, that's potentially what could happen. So I'm sorry. I think it was a great job. I think the presentation was well. I love the whole look of it. It's just on the wrong side at this time for me. So I hope you can work with staff and come up with some better opportunities for that site. We have a great site at 263 Barrie. I think the developer there did a great job of paying attention to what we wanted on that site. And I think we were able to work with that. And I think if you can find a way to work with our staff and work with this council to make sure that you get the best product that you like and that the community likes, we can all go home happy at the end of the night. So I apologize for now, but hopefully work with our staff a little bit further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I think we've had all members of council comment, and there are still some concerns, I guess, and we did hear comments from neighbors and residents. And Councillor Sandu.
Your Worship, I just have a general comment. You know, all the residents that whether live on any street that backs onto Holland or Barrie, if they moved there years ago and they think that nothing's going to happen on those streets and these are not going to develop, then I think they're not in tune with reality. But I like what our last public speaker, Donna, said, that, you know, they realize that, but let's stay within our current bylaws. And that's the key. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sandu. So I'll give either Brandon or Mr. Rogers a chance to comment at this time. Most of them were comments. There weren't a lot of questions, I don't think, but Brad, do you want to wrap up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and to the public that spoke this evening. We have made notes of your comments. We're happy to continue to work with staff to address some of the issues. I think that we've come a long way with respect to the last proposal and to this proposal with respect to impacts to the people on Stoddard. We'll have further meetings with staff and we'll see where this will take us. It's always difficult when you're doing intensification projects because they have effects on neighborhoods, and changing neighborhoods and established neighborhoods is difficult for councils, and we respect that. And I also think council respects the provincial policies and county policies and their encouragement for intensification. So it's a balance that we as planners try to achieve with municipal staff and local councils, and we'll do our best to try to achieve that. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. And Brandon, do you want to wrap up? Is there anything further that you'd like to say?
I have nothing to add, but I just like to thank all the public for their comments, and as well as council, and we'll continue to work with Brad and Groundswell to hopefully work on a solution that makes everybody happy, because that's what we're always really looking to do. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. So moving on with the agenda, council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for a further recommendation report at a later date. So I do have a recommendation that report DES 2020-19 regarding public information meeting, application for draft plan of subdivision approval and zoning bylaw amendment 239-3323 Ontario Incorporated Lions Estates for 266 Barrie Street, file number D12-1701 and D14-1702 be received, and that the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and address same in its recommendation report. So a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Orr, Deputy Mayor Leduc. Any further comments? Call for the vote to receive. All those in favor? It is carried. So just to follow up, it is recommended that all comments or questions on planning applications be submitted in writing to planninginfo@townofbwg.com. Written submissions are not required at a public meeting, but can be made at a later date and will be accepted up to the date the council makes a decision on the matter. Written submissions on planning matters will not be read at the council meeting, but will be forwarded to planning staff for consideration and or response. Council will be appraised of all public comments and received prior to making a decision on the application. If you wish to receive information on a specific planning application or to be notified of an upcoming meeting related to a planning matter, please email planninginfo@townofbwg.com. So we'll adjourn the public meeting at this time. A recommendation that the public meeting is hereby adjourned at 9:30. Mover and a seconder for this, Councillor Daikie, Councillor Ferragini. Comments? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It is carried. Confirm proceedings, recommendation that bylaw 2020-48, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the special council meeting dated May the 26th, 2020 be enacted. Mover and a seconder for this, Councillor Sandu, Councillor Contois, all in favor? It is carried. And just before adjournment, I would like to comment about both public meetings that we had tonight. That just thank all the public engagement, all the emails that we had for the first cemetery application. We didn't read out the different emails that we did get, but rest assured that members of council will see copies of them. They have already, many of them, but with the numbers that were sent to us late this afternoon, that we will make sure that every member of council will see the comments. And similarly for the application on Barrie Street, 266 Barrie Street. Thank you for all the comments, and you can still forward comments into planninginfo@bwg.com. So with that, adjournment recommendation that the meeting is hereby adjourned at 9:31 p.m. A mover and a seconder for this, Councillor Lamb, Councillor Ferragini, all in favor? It is carried. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.